Emma had always been the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. Confident, graceful, and full of quiet charm, she was the girl everyone wanted to be friends with, and the woman many men had tried to love. I met her during our college days in Vermont, and we quickly became inseparable. We shared dorm rooms, late-night coffee runs, heartbreaks, and dreams. I always admired the way she carried herself, even when life wasn't kind. So when she met Ryan, a charismatic photographer from Seattle with a crooked smile and a soft voice, I believed she'd found her forever. They had the kind of love that made people believe in happy endings. At least that's what it looked like from the outside. But love can change. It can shrink in silence, grow distant in routine, and disappear slowly, like snow melting in the sun. That's what happened with Emma and Ryan. After 12 years of marriage, they were strangers, sleeping under the same roof. The laughter faded, the touches stopped, and the warmth between them cooled into something bitter and quiet. Ryan eventually left. No big fight, no final apology. Just a note on the kitchen counter and a suitcase gone from the hallway. Emma was left behind, hollowed out and heartbroken. She moved back east, settling into a small apartment just 2 streets away from me and my husband, Daniel, here in a quiet suburb of Massachusetts. When I saw her again, I barely recognized her. She still looked beautiful, Emma always did, but her eyes didn't shine like they used to. Her smile was thin, cracked at the edges. She'd sit with us for dinner, politely answering questions, and pretending to laugh at Daniel's jokes. But there was an emptiness behind it all. Heartbreak has a sound. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, like the way someone sighs, when they think no one is listening. That was Emma. And I couldn't stand watching her drift through her days like a ghost of who she used to be. One evening, as I watched her sitting on our porch alone, a glass of wine untouched beside her, I felt something stir inside me, a mix of protectiveness, guilt, and something else I didn't want to name. My husband, Daniel, was inside doing the dishes as he always did, humming quietly to himself. He wasn't the poetic, charming type like Ryan. He was steady, strong, patient. The kind of man who didn't say much but made you feel safe just by standing next to you. Emma had always liked him, respected him, trusted him. That night, I asked him something I never thought I would. "Daniel, can you be there for her?" I said softly. "I think she needs someone, and I don't think it can be me." He looked at me, eyebrows raised, not quite sure what I meant. I didn't mean have an affair or cross any lines. I meant be kind to her, sit with her, make her feel like she's not alone. Let her lean on you, just for a while. I knew it was an unusual request. I knew how dangerous it sounded, but I also knew Daniel. I trusted him, with everything. And I trusted Emma too. At least I thought I did. He nodded slowly. "If that's what you want," he said. And just like that, the first line of a new story began, one I never saw coming, one where love, grief, and longing would mix in ways that none of us were prepared for. I thought I was helping her heal. I didn't realize I was opening a door that none of us knew how to close. At first, it was just small things. Daniel bringing Emma a coffee when he picked one up for me, offering to walk her dog when she wasn't feeling up to it, checking in with a soft knock on her door after work. Nothing dramatic, nothing inappropriate. Just quiet acts of kindness that didn't make headlines but mattered more than anyone realized. I watched from a distance, telling myself I had asked for this. I had invited him into her loneliness, hoping that his calm, grounded nature would help her feel safe again. And slowly, something began to shift in Emma. The sadness didn't disappear overnight, but the way she held herself began to change. Her shoulders relaxed. Her voice lost that tremble. There was still pain in her eyes, but it wasn't as sharp. It softened, little by little, especially when Daniel was around. He wasn't doing anything special. Just listening. Just being there. But sometimes, that's all it takes to start healing a broken heart. They started taking walks around the lake a few blocks from our neighborhood in the early evenings. Emma said it helped her sleep. Sometimes I went with them, but most of the time I stayed back. I told myself it was better this way, giving her space, letting Daniel be the comfort she needed. They talked about everything on those walks: childhood memories, old movies, heartbreak, and the kind of love that doesn't always get a second chance. Emma began opening up to him in ways she never had with me. She told him things about her, marriage, about the loneliness she'd hidden behind a perfect smile, and Daniel listened, with the same steady focus he'd always given me when life got too heavy to carry alone. One afternoon, she gave him a scarf she'd knitted. It was navy blue, his favorite color, and she laughed a little when she handed it to him. "It's not perfect," she said, "but I figured you might need something warm when the cold comes back." He smiled and wrapped it around his neck like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Thank you," he said, and there was a silence between them. Gentle, not awkward. The kind of silence where something unspoken hangs in the air, just waiting for one person to admit they feel it too. I saw it happen. I saw her start to glow again. Not because she was falling in love, not yet, but because someone made her feel seen again, desired again. Not in a romantic way, not openly, but in that raw, human way we all crave after being broken. And I saw something else too. Daniel watching her with a kind of protectiveness that made my chest tighten. Not love. Not yet. But care. Deep care. I'd asked him to be there for her, and he had been. But what I hadn't expected was the way I began to feel, watching their connection grow. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was more like realizing that you had opened a door, and now there was no way to close it without hurting someone. I told myself over and over again, he comes home to me. He kisses me goodnight. But I couldn't deny the way my heart twisted when I saw her look at him like he was the last safe place in a world that had failed her. Then came the night it rained. Soft and steady, like the background music to a moment you don't forget. Emma came over, soaking wet, holding back tears, and Daniel wrapped her in a towel without a word. She clung to him like she was drowning, and he held her close, whispering something I couldn't hear. I stood in the hallway, frozen, watching her cry into his chest. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just healing. This was something more. The night it rained changed something between all of us, even though none of us dared to say it out loud. Emma had come over late, her hair damp, her eyes red, wearing a hoodie that didn't quite cover how broken she felt inside. She didn't even knock, just stood in the doorway trembling. I was in the kitchen pouring tea, and Daniel saw her first. Without hesitation, he took her into his arms, wrapped a blanket around her, and held her like she might slip away if he let go. She didn't say much, just, "I don't know how to do this." And Daniel, with his voice low and steady, said, "You're not alone, Emma. You don't have to do it alone." That was all. No promises, no big declarations. But the way she leaned into him, resting her head against his chest like it was the only place she could breathe, made something inside me ache. I had told him to be there for her, but I never imagined it would look like this. I watched them from the hallway, hidden in the shadows, feeling like a stranger in my own home. There was no betrayal in that moment. Nothing physical, nothing anyone could blame. But there was a closeness, a tenderness, that you only give to someone who matters deeply. That's what scared me. Emma had been my best friend, my sister in all but blood, and now she was reaching for my husband in a way that felt too intimate to ignore. And he let her. Not because he wanted to hurt me, but because he cared. And that kind of caring, it's dangerous. After that night, things became quiet in a different way. Emma didn't come over as often, but when she did, she and Daniel shared glances that said more than words. The kind of looks two people exchange when they've seen each other's pain up close. I pretended not to notice. I smiled through dinner, asked about her work, nodded politely when she laughed at something Daniel said. But inside, I was unraveling. I started wondering if I had made a mistake. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I had given them a space to connect. And now that connection had grown into something I couldn't control. Then, one morning over coffee, Emma looked at me with tears in her eyes. She didn't try to hide it this time. Her voice shook when she said, "I think I'm falling for him." The words hit me like a slow wave, soft but suffocating. She looked ashamed, as if she hated herself for even saying it, but she couldn't lie to me. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It just happened." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to yell, to say she had crossed a line. But the truth was, I had drawn that line. I had offered Daniel to her as a lifeline, not realizing that hearts don't always follow rules. And now, the two people I love most were tangled in something none of us could name. Daniel was honest when I asked him. He sat beside me on the porch, staring out at the fading sunlight, and said, "I'm not in love with her, but I care. I can't help that." He looked tired, like the weight of holding two fragile hearts was starting to wear on him, and I believed him. I did. But I also knew that something had changed between us. Something small, maybe invisible to others, but very real. It was the kind of change that doesn't break a marriage, but it leaves a quiet crack, a fault line. And once it's there, it never fully disappears. We didn't talk about it again that night. He kissed me gently, like he was trying to remind me that I was still his home. But even in his kiss, I could feel the echo of something unspoken, something that belonged to Emma now too. Life didn't fall apart after Emma told me she was falling for Daniel, but it didn't stay the same either. There was a silence between all of us, not cold or angry, just tender. Like we were walking on glass, afraid any step might shatter what was left of our closeness. Emma pulled away after that. She stopped coming over. No more dinners, no more long walks with Daniel, no more sitting on our porch sipping wine like the world hadn't changed. I think she realized she had let herself feel too much, and that scared her. It scared me too. But part of love, the real grown-up kind, is understanding that it doesn't always stay neat. Sometimes it spills into places it shouldn't, and no one really means for it to happen. That's what this had become. Something unintentional. Something soft and tangled and too complicated to label. Daniel and I stayed together. We still cooked dinner together, watched late-night shows, kissed each other goodnight. But something had shifted between us. A kind of quiet awareness that we'd both been part of something emotional we hadn't prepared for. He never denied his care for her, but he always came back to me. That mattered. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was marriage. Real, flawed, beautifully human marriage. Emma made the decision to leave about a month after that conversation. She told me over coffee, her hands wrapped tightly around the mug, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to go. I need space to figure out who I am without someone else saving me. I didn't beg her to stay. As much as it broke my heart, I knew she was right. She had fallen into something fragile and confusing with Daniel, and even if nothing had crossed the line physically, her heart had been involved. Staying here, so close to us, wasn't going to help her heal. So she packed her things and moved to Colorado, to a little town near Boulder, where she said the mountains made her feel small in the best way. She didn't say goodbye to Daniel. She didn't need to. The night before she left, she slipped a note into our mailbox. It simply said, "Thank you for catching me when I fell. I'll never forget it." Daniel read it and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he folded it and tucked it into his wallet. I didn't ask him why. I didn't need to. I knew what it meant. She had been a chapter in his life, in our life. A chapter that changed us, that tested us, but also reminded us what it means to be truly human. To love without ownership. To care deeply, even when it hurts. And to let go when the time comes. Months passed. Seasons changed. Daniel and I worked on us, not because we were broken, but because we had grown. And growing means learning each other all over again. There are still moments I think of Emma, when the first leaves fall in October, or when it rains softly on a Sunday morning. Sometimes Daniel goes quiet in those moments too. We never speak her name out loud anymore, but I know she lives in a part of both our hearts, not as a threat, not as regret, but as someone who reminded us how fragile and beautiful connection can be. Love is not always about possession. Sometimes it's about presence, about being there when someone is drowning. And sometimes the most powerful kind of love is the one you let go of, with grace, with kindness, and with gratitude. In the quiet of our home, where her echo still lingers, I know we all loved each other in our own way, and maybe that's enough.